It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The NFL playoffs are here. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the number one sportsbook in America, FanDuel. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today to get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel has all your favorite bets from the money line to point spreads to player props. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
It's a jam-packed Thursday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, everybody. We're continuing our breakdown of the top 5 underrated players at every single position in the NHL. We got big-time bets and a big-time guest to talk all the fantasy news on the right-wing side of things. Thank you for joining us. Let's get this money, everybody.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fantasy fanatics, hockey heads, and degenerate gamblers, unite and stand up. Your show is back on the air. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I'm joined, as always, by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Steele Roden. It's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Steele, another big-time guest. We're switching things up. We're doing day-to-day countdowns. I love the underrated angle. We're going positionally. Left wing was yesterday. Right wing is today. We have our friend Blake Creamer on. He's going to hit us with some of his fantasy takes. Co-host of, or option, he's a top option for that Apples and Ginos podcast. He does his own fantasy podcast. We're going to give him his shot to plug the show. And we got big-time bets for a juicy, let me check the number, 9-game Thursday board, Steele. Hey, I'm excited to talk this underrated list. You were getting a little bit of heat about your list positionally. I hope you're getting a little tighter with that today. But yeah, man, I always love the countdowns, and I'm excited to have another big guest on.
Yeah, that's why you're here as well. You're holding me down. You're making sure my lists are proper. A little bit debatable with the left wing positions yesterday, but I'm excited to get Blake on here. I've talked to him a couple times on his podcast. He's a great guy to talk to. Knows exactly what he's talking about. Very insightful, folks. So let's get him on the podcast, and let's see what his top 5 underrated right wingers are as well.
Here he is.
We're here. We're back. Thanks for staying tuned with the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Like we said, special guest for today's episode, the one and only Blake Creamer, host of the Fantasy NHL Today podcast, a Sports Ethos production, a regular on Apples and Ginos. He's been kind enough to have me on his podcast a couple of times, had some great conversations, very insightful. So thanks, Blake, for joining us for today's episode, talking about some underrated right wingers, top 5 underrated right wingers. And before we jump into today's topic, I just wanted to, give you the spotlight right now. Let everyone out there share where they can find your content, all your socials, so they can be aware of where your hot content is coming from as well.
Awesome, man. Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, first off, thanks a lot, Flip and Steele, for having me. This is awesome. This is an honor. I'm a fan of your show. All right, been listening for a little while, so way to go. You guys are killing it. You guys are grinding your brains out. All right, and I'm here for it. Yeah. So yeah, you can find me on Twitter. Yeah, just at Blake Creamer SE. Please go follow. All right, please. Come on. And then yeah, so I do a podcast called Fantasy NHL Today. I do that 3 times a week, 2 to 3 times a week as best I can. Got a couple young kids that are taking up my time. So, gotta, get the biz there. But yeah, I do that. And then every Sunday night, I do a podcast with Apples and Ginos Fantasy Podcast. So I do that Sunday night with Nate Gruten-Niblick. He's one of the content contributors for Yahoo Fantasy. So yeah, it's awesome. I'm just loving fantasy hockey. I got a bad addiction, and I got to get it out. You know what I'm talking about?
There's no bad addictions on this show, my friend. We're all just here for each other to support those addictions and hopefully translate those into some money. That's why we have Blake on the show today. We're taking a look at some of these under the radar, underrated right wingers. And trust me, we're going to get to those big time bets as well, people. But Blake, we have you on. I love your content on the Apples and Ginos podcast. Shout out to what you're doing on your own show. Make sure you go check out Blake across Twitter. But enough of the pleasantries. We have you on here. I want to pick your brain. The listeners want to know who you're looking at. Underrated right wingers. I got 4 or 5 guys, but I'm going to keep my list short because I want to hear what you have to say. Hit me with who you're looking at the 5 spot.
Absolutely. All right. Well, right wing, first off, has been, as you guys remember, just during draft season, it was a pretty scarce position. So right wing is something I looked at during draft season quite a bit, just seeing where I can, get some of the good guys before they sort of fall away, right? This is kind of what shook out here. So my number 5 is Lawson Crouse of the Arizona Coyotes.
Interesting.
I mean, I was looking for some guys that maybe weren't as obvious. So, he's my
sure.
picks. So there you go. He's 13%. Yeah, he's 13% owned on Yahoo. He's technically a left winger, so it's a little cheesy. He's left wing, right wing eligible on Yahoo. So, just take it with a grain of salt. Okay. But he's been doing pretty good. So before he got injured, he's missed the last 4 games he's day-to-day with an upper body injury. But prior to that, he had 5 points in his last 4 games. Awesome. So he's got 27 points on the season. And he's played 43 games. So that's 16 goals, 11 assists, but only 3 points on the power play. So he's not giving you really anything there, although he is getting some power play time. He's just not doing much with it. So he's a second line player with Arizona, but what makes him valuable to me is he bangs. All right. This man, he just, he's got some anger issues. He's out there crushing people. All right. He's already got in 43 games, he's got over 100 hits. What are you doing, my guy? So, and he's had over 200 hits in previous seasons. So that's the kind of player you're looking at here. So, I mean, definitely we're talking in category leagues. This guy is a beauty. Points leagues, you probably, maybe stream him in if Arizona has a good schedule. But he kind of profiles as a 4th liner that has some offensive skill. And now he's getting the opportunity to showcase that skill. So kind of think along the lines of like Scott Lawton, right? Guys like that, he's that kind of player. He's not really getting anything done on the power play. Like I said, he's power play 2, but his deployment is really strong, 5-on-5. He's playing with Nick Bjugstad and the golden boy, Dylan Guenther, however you say that.
Jeez. Yeah. Guenther.
So
hey, this is why I already appreciate having Blake on, because Steele was on here on this under the radar underrated list, naming off all-stars yesterday. William Nylander's underrated. I had to let the man go.
I had to show him some love.
Here you are highlighting an actual under the radar player. There's a lot of guys to get to. So Steele, hit me with very quickly who you have at the 5 spot. I'm going to keep all of my breakdown short and sweet because I can already have a feeling we might be getting long in the tooth for today's episode. But I already appreciate Blake's analysis because also Lawson Crouse is a very good keeper dynasty piece. He does chip in with the goals. He plays with that edge. Pims he comes in with. Definitely a banger league beauty. Steele, who's at your number 5 spot before I spout off at the mouth for a little bit?
Yeah, well, you guys might have to hold me down just a little bit for today's episode.
Oh, not again.
Hey, I'm doing my best out here.
I only have one tin here, pal. Like, hold it down.
I'm going to try to do so. But I'm starting off with Tyler Toffoli at the number 5 spot for me of the Calgary Flames. I think he goes very undervalued and underrated in my opinion.
Yeah.
Typically Tyler Toffoli drafted around round 12, round 15, which in my opinion is a little bit later in the draft where he should be going. I think he should be going as high as maybe 10, 11. But if you can get him at 12 and 15, it's an absolute steal because he's a consistent 45, 50-point player every single season since he's been in the NHL. 17 goals, 40 points in 48 games this year. He's 18 points away from blowing his career high out of the water, which is 58 points. So, he's 30 years old now. He's not the same type of player. He's a little bit slower. He doesn't hit as much anymore, but he's still producing offensively. And I think it's the awareness of where he is on the ice, finding those open areas with who he's playing with, whether he's on the 3rd line, 2nd line, or 1st line. he gets bumped down and up the lineup quite a bit, but no matter who he's playing with, it's the awareness for me that is setting him apart right now. Like I said, 40 points in 48 games, and he's going to blow his career high at 58 out of the water park at the end of the season. So I think the Calgary Flames also at the same time are kind of figuring their chemistry out and clicking that they weren't at the beginning of the season. So that's the guy I have at number 5, but we're going to see what your reactions will be for the rest of my players.
I don't hate the Tyler Toffoli angle at all. Also, how bad the Calgary Flames have been. His numbers are actually pretty solid, and I mentioned it yesterday. Plus minus is not a good stat of how solid a player has necessarily been playing. But when the Calgary Flames are what the Calgary Flames have been, and Toffoli's at +5 and scoring what he's doing at only 16 minutes a game in ice time, it's impressive. My number 5 guy, and you're going to get no explanation from me because then I'm just going to hit my 4th right away before I pass it back to Blake for his. Adrian Kempe is a player sneaking up the roster in LA, and he's starting to really score goals. And again, I talk about this East Coast, West Coast coverage. If you're an East Coast fan, which a lot of the media and a lot of the popular attention comes from the East Coast, you miss out on these LA Kings games, and the Kopitars of the world, the Drew Doughties of the world, if you're dedicated, Sean Durzees and whatnot. Adrian Kempe, 19 goals this season. Very nasty. I said you weren't going to get a preamble, but you got one anyway. 32 points in 50 games. He deserves some love on the left wing spot. And maybe the most underrated on this list, but not the best in my opinion. Has anyone ever shown any love to Troy Terry ever? Troy Terry is getting it done again on a bad team. And again, outside of dedicated fantasy circles, Steele and Blake, I'm excited for your take for your next guy and for Troy Terry. 13 goals, 28 assists, and 41 points for 48 games this season. Back-to-back really good years. It's time to start showing some respect to Troy Terry's game, especially given what he has around him in Anaheim. Very underrated left winger.
Flip, Steele, you guys got to get out of my head. All right.
Thank you. Hey, this is good. If we're covering the same players, we're shaving minutes here.
All right, there you go. And so Tyler Toffoli's my number 4, and Troy Terry is actually my number 2.
Bang.
So
love this.
So I love those players. I think, and I love Kempe too. I didn't put him on here, but Kempe's killing it. I've got him on a couple teams as well.
Me too.
I think Kempe and Toffoli kind of profiled as the same type of player, like more goals than assists, right? But I think Kempe's team is going a little better right now. My thing with Toffoli. A great point you made, Flip, about just Calgary's play in general. And Toffoli's been maintaining sort of his play. And like you said, he's gonna blast his career high out of the water, right? So if Calgary starts playing a little better, Toffoli's probably going to come along with that, right? So I like that pick a lot. And then Troy Terry, I'll just talk on him really quick. This guy gets no love whatsoever, but 41 points in 48 games. Just players on Anaheim. A lot of people stay away from teams that are bottom dwellers, right? And to me, Troy Terry is a guy, even in the advanced stats that I like to look at. Troy Terry, his stats hold up, and it's equaling stats on the ice too. 7 points in his last 5 games. I actually had an interesting stat I saw on Twitter today. I thought I'd share with you guys. Troy Terry is second in the league in end-to-end rushes. Just behind McDavid. Weird
guys,
stuff.
This is why you got to go out and check out Blake across all platforms you find your favorite content, at Apples and Genos, and at his own Twitter account, at Blake Creamer SE, because he's bringing that fire. I appreciate that, Blake. You're on point. You got the Raptors cap on, my friend. I'm feeling this love, and I'm feeling your take. Steele, you know how hyped up right now we are, though, about our new sponsorship with FanDuel. FanDuel is the #1 sports book in America, and we're really excited about this new sponsorship. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. They're the #1 sports book in America, and if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today to get started with $150 free in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just go over to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel has all of your favorite bets, from the money line to the point spreads to the player props like Steele and I do for the NHL boards. You can find it all at FanDuel. Plus, you can combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay, which is also extra spicy depending on what you're wagering on. So make sure you hit up FanDuel today. And speaking of which, the app It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet for $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/locked-on. Make every moment more at FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
This is Dane Lewis from the Locked On Stars podcast, here to let you know the following message brought to you by Discover. Did you know that you could reduce the number of unwanted calls and emails with online privacy protection, the latest innovation from Discover? Discover will help regularly remove your personal info, like your name and address, from 10 popular people search websites that could sell your data, and they'll do it for free. Activate in the Discover app and see terms and learn more at discover.com/online privacy protection.
Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Don't forget, we are free and available on your favorite podcast platforms, including YouTube. So hit the subscribe, hit the follow button, and thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with our special guest, Blake Creamer. Again, go hit up his socials and his podcast, Fantasy NHL Today, as well. He's very insightful. He knows what he's talking about.
Sports ethos, baby.
He's absolutely dominating Flip and I in the fantasy hockey pool, right? Or
there's not enough time in the episode, Steele, and some of us are not doing as well as others. So we're going to omit that part of the show. Thank you very much. Who else do you have on your list?
I had to show Blake some love because he is crushing it right now in the fantasy
Must be
league,
nice to be Blake.
I'll go with number 4 right now, and maybe this is just me, but I'm looking at Patrick Laine, who doesn't get enough credit and enough love right now, and I think for certain reasons, and obviously it's the injury concern. I've seen him over the last few years go down, fall down in the draft boards, round 5, round 6, round 7, the same way I saw Jack Eichel fall in draft boards as well, because everyone was afraid of the injury concern. How is he going to play coming back from the injury, or the injury history that he has? So I'm going to try to show some Patrick Laine some love here. I know he's on your fantasy team, Flip, but he deserves the recognition. 56 points in 56 games last year, point per game, but look at this season. He's already missed 15 games. He missed 26 games last year, and he's just been dealt a very tough card his entire NHL career. Started with Winnipeg, didn't want to be there. Gets traded to Columbus. He's got John Tortorella as a coach, an absolute bona fide scrub. And then he gets injured. So he's had some bad cards dealt for him, but hopefully he turns it around. And I just wanted to show Patrick Laine some love because he is, in my opinion, underrated. He's second overall pick.
In my opinion, this is a bold take, Steele. I don't hate it. Like, I'm not ready to spout off here at the hip like I tend to do sometimes. We have a guest here on the show. I got to keep it legit here. Patrick Laine is properly rated, in my opinion, and the book is out on his injury status. He's a bit made of glass. I think people know this in the fantasy realm. When he's healthy, sure, I don't mind him on this list, but he's just not proven to be. But like I said, very quickly, my third guy, I'll flip it over to Blake in a sec. I got to talk, if we're talking right wing, Steele, I can't come on here and not talk about my boy Drizzy Drake Batherson. Someone needs to throw some respect on his name as well, because he is a nasty player, and he's not even close to scratching the surface of his talent or ability. And there's been a lot of roadblocks in Ottawa this season, and my man still has 40 points, 14 goals, 26 assists. He can fly. He can skate. He's playing more minutes. No one really talks about Batherson this year because of how good Claude Giroux, even Brady Tkachuk, even a disappointing season, Tim Stutzla, a step-out season. Under the radar for me, Drake Batherson, and a huge piece of Ottawa's future. When you look at the plus-minus, though, minus 32, it's ugly. I get it, but he's a favorite player of mine, and I can't come on this list because of his potential. Right now, also, he's getting rushes on the third line. That's not how to utilize this player, and he is an 80, even 90-point player, in my opinion, at his ceiling. Lots of come up for a fourth-round player who needs a lot more respect on his name, Steele. Actually, Blake.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all your takes so far. Just a quick thing on Laine there. I'm not sure that he's underrated, but he's certainly underperforming. And what I think, moving forward with Laine, I think what you're talking about, Steele, is going to equal some value come draft season next year.
Yeah.
Right? Because Laine,
excellent.
Yeah, he is injury prone, but that's not something we can predict in fantasy, right? I personally don't draft based on those type of things. I draft the best player that fills kind of a need, because you can't predict injuries, right? So if you're thinking about injuries, you might miss out on a player like Laine could come back and play all 82 games next season, 50 goals, 90 points, with all those crazy periffs and shots and all that. So anyways, that's my take on Laine. Let's get the biz. Let's get into my number 3 pick. It's Brandon Hagel. All right.
Okay.
That beauty on the T-Bay Lightning. All right. This guy's awesome. 40 points in 46 games. That's awesome. 9 power play points. All right. He spent a lot of time this season so far up on the top line. Right now he's on the second line with Killorn and Anthony Cirelli, but he's still getting first line power play deployment. And that's the key right there. That's why this guy he's just crushing right now. And his minutes are still good. He's still 18 to 20 minutes a night. That's excellent. And he's on a 71-point pace. I don't know if anyone saw this coming, right? I know if you just think about the Blackhawks last season and kind of how ticked off, Kane and Taves were when they traded this guy. It didn't really materialize last year with Tampa Bay, but this year he's getting the opportunity. And I think, he's 66% rostered on Yahoo. This guy, I think he should probably be on a roster. 66 is too low. So I don't know your thoughts on Hagel there, but
I like the spot, and honestly, it really fits the bill of underrated, because I don't think I've heard a single person ever, other than maybe Steele, who's a dedicated fantasy head, say anything about Brandon Hagel, and that's just because he's kind of that sneaky under-the-radar guy. He doesn't have a big name. He's not very flashy. He gets things done effectively in the minutes that are provided to him, and now look at him get a little bit more of an opportunity, like you mentioned, Blake, with some elite players in Tampa Bay, who I think in general, this might be saying something about a team who has 2 cups in the rafters and a trip to the Stanley Cup over the last 3 years. No one's talking about Tampa Bay this year, and they better pay attention very quickly, because also Toronto Maple Leafs fans, me being one of them, very excited about this season. There's a crash course coming between the Tampa Bay Lightning and Toronto Maple Leafs again. And to me, I don't really care about what the Maple Leafs have done this year. The Tampa Bay Lightning deserve to be a favorite, and a lot of it has to do with the depth scoring that you mentioned from Hagel. I appreciate that very quickly. I think, Steele, should we do you want me to hit you with my second? You want to go? Should we go to break? I'm fired up right now. You take it away, my friend.
I'll hit you with my third one, but quickly on Brandon Hagel. I was a little hard on him, at the trade deadline and in the playoffs, because I don't think he's performing at the time. But now, look, you got to keep an eye on Tampa Bay. They always do something at the trade deadline. They go out and get Nicholas Paul. They go out and get Brandon Hagel, and those guys have been studs since since pretty much getting acquired by them. So we definitely got to keep an eye on the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm looking at the rivals, though, of the Lightning right now. In my opinion, maybe my list is a little bit bad right now, but I'm looking at Sam Reinhart.
Back-to-back episodes, bro. What are you drinking out there? Are you on that BC Bud out west? What's going on?
I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. Too much sugar over here, but I'm looking at Sam Reinhart as underrated. And I know he's been a little bit slow to the season, but, a guy who I completely forgot that went second overall in the first round, to the Buffalo Sabres. Again, consistent 45, 60-point player a season. I know he had a career-high 82 points last year, but that was his peak ceiling for him. Falling a little bit down to where he normally is. And, as of right now, believe he has 40 points on the season or close to. He's going to finish again in that 55, 60-point range by the end. The Florida Panthers score a ton of goals, and I don't think he's valued enough for what he does for the team. Net front presence, a guy who always just parks his butt right in front of the goalie, grabbing those rebounds, does a little bit of the dirty work, does a little bit of physical activity as well. He's a great presence on the power play, 15 or 16 power play points on the season. So I think he goes very undervalued in my opinion.
Bit of a hard sell for me, Blake. I don't know what you think about it. I'm on the fence about this take. He has produced, though, so I can't even fully disagree with what you're saying, Steele, because at the end of the day, we are looking for numbers, and he has been doing that. In my opinion, he might be properly rated. We're going to get a lot more from Blake after the break. We're going to get to big-time bets as well very quickly, Steele. Why don't you take us to break here? Because I got 2 more guys that, honestly, could be interchangeable this year. That's how good they are. But the fact that the guy that I have at number 1 is at number 1 is going to tell a lot about how good he is.
I'll tell you what, my top two guys, I'm excited to see what Blake's top guy is as well, but my top two guys are rightfully fit right now for the top
I
two
think you and I
spots,
have the same too. So why don't we get to break and then I
No,
want to hear from Blake.
definitely don't, but we got to thank our listeners out there. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you go hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Flip and I appreciate all the love and all the support out there. And once again, show some love to our special guest, Blake Creamer, a Sports Ethos production, the NHL Fantasy Today podcast, a regular on Apples and Genos as well. Go show some love. Go follow him on all his socials too. Mm-hmm. Blake, I know, I believe you said you had Tyler Toffoli or Troy Terry at number 2. So who's your number 1 guy? Who are you looking at? Who's the most underrated right winger right now?
Hit us, Blake. Oh. And the pressure's on right now, my friend. So you better be careful. No, I'm kidding. Who do you got at number 1?
Oh my goodness. All right. I'll give you my number 1, but I do want to quickly say, I absolutely agree with your take, Steele, about Sam Reinhart. I love that player. I think, and to your point as well, Flip, I think, there was a lot of expectations coming into the season where he was kind of properly rated and he just stunk. He had such a garbage first half that now that he's playing well, he's underrated. It's like people, he played so poorly for the first half of that season that people just got off the train. In fact, I picked him up off waivers. It doesn't even make sense. Like this man had 82 points last year, but now he's cooking 8 points in the last 5 games. I think Reinhardt's going to crush for the last second half of the season here. That's my take there. All right. My number 1 is a man named Arturi Lehkonen. All right. For the Colorado Avalanche.
Love it.
Okay. I'm ready for this explanation.
Oh, yeah. This guy is an absolute unit. All right. And his offensive numbers aren't the same as some of the other guys, but this is the guy of these 5 guys that I would like on my team, and I have on a lot of my teams. All right. So 34 points, 43 games. That goes with 15 goals, 19 assists, but 16 power play points. That is a little bit of all right. Okay. So one thing about Lehkonen, he is killing it with his ice time. So last season, and he had a good season, he was starting to have a good season. 15 minutes average ice time. This season, 21:43 average ice time. And that hasn't wavered. That's over 43 games. This guy is getting a ton of deployment in the top 6 on a really good team. All right. First off, right. So that guy needs to be rostered. No question. 73, too low for Lehkonen, in my opinion. He's getting power play 1. Okay. And his power play deployment is nuts. So, I mean, he's got last season, again, 1 minute average ice time on the power play. This season, 4 minutes, just over 4 minutes with McKinnon, with all these guys. Right. So I love Lehkonen for that, but it doesn't stop there. Like he bangs, he blocks, right? So cross category coverage. And I think personally, like Lehkonen's hot right now. He's doing very well. He's got 4 goals and 1 assist in his last 5.
It's true.
And Landeskog is coming back at some point, right? So there's going to be someone in the top 6 that moves down, but I don't think it's going to be Lehkonen. I think it's going to be, Evan Rodriguez or JT Compher that's going to be moved, right? This guy is still going to get top 6 deployment and likely top power play on Colorado. I think the floor for this guy, 55 points. I think the ceiling 70. I think he could get 70 points. Obviously, he's got to do some work here, but this guy's a beauty. I love Lehkonen. He passes the eye test to me. He's a great player.
I appreciate everything that you just brought to the table. And actually, what I appreciate the most about all of your players, Blake, is that they are truly under the radar and underappreciated. And I kind of sold out a little bit with my top 2 guys, Steele. And I'm going to do this very quickly because if you know me and you're thinking in my head, my top 2 guys. First of all, both of these players, in my opinion, that I'm about to ream off, are interchangeable at the most underrated at this position, despite how good they are. Number 1, Alex Tuch's season is a special one, and no one's talking about it. And the fact that neither of you guys have Alex Tuch here at the number right wing position in top 5, I'm questioning it a little bit, especially because he has 2 less points than Mitch Marner. 2 less points than Mitch Marner, and Mitch Marner is setting historic records. So a lot more respect needs to be put on Alex Tuch's name. That's number 1. And number 2, this player in Mikko Rantanen has carried his team. And aside from Alexander Georgiev, and this is where I might take some heat, Rantanen might be properly rated. Dedicated hockey guys know how good Rantanen is, but others don't. And at 58 points this season, he is one of the best players in the NHL, and he definitely doesn't get the credit as such. He's not even getting paid as such. And if not for the bigger names on his team, and Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar and even Gabriel Landeskog, and last year even Nazem Kadri, this guy would be a superstar in any other market, and he has a beautiful season in the works, 32 goals and 26 assists. Both Alex Tuch and Mikko Rantanen deserve to be at the top of this underrated right winger list in whatever fantasy format you want to break down.
No, completely agree with that. I was going to have him on the list, but I didn't want to, do another list where it's a little bit debatable. And I think
these are subjective lists, baby. This is for fun, right? As long as we're pretty close, I'm with it.
Very subjective list, but I think it goes great with Blake's point with Arturi Lehkonen. The fact that Colorado has suffered so many injuries, and it's really been on the shoulders of Rantanen, but Lehkonen's been there to kind of help and push it along as well. Definitely underrated guys. I got two guys left. The top guy's just for you, Flip. But my second guy is Victor Arvidsson. I think he's very underappreciated.
Deserves to be on this list.
Deserves to be on it. A guy who either isn't drafted whatsoever or goes drafted in the last 3 rounds, which is an absolute steal. 33 points in 45 games. And that's struggling over the last 5 games as well. 0 points in his last 5 games, but he's on the second line. I love that second line for the LA Kings with Philip Deneau and now Alex Iafallo. I think Kevin Fiala should be on that second line with Deneau and Arvidsson, which can get them
lineup's
all
in
going
flux
again. But we're talking about an LA Kings team that is top 10 in goals for this season. They scored a ton of goals. Victor Arvidsson is a guy who I love to pick up, a guy who I've picked up twice in 2 different fantasy leagues off the waiver wire. And again, like to Blake's point with guys who are rostered, he's only rostered at 56%, 58% right now. It should be definitely at least in the 60s, high 60s for me. And then my top guy, this one's just for Flip because I know he loves this player so much. Joe Pavelski of the Dallas Stars. He is the most underrated right winger in the league. Flip, this one's just for you. 38 years old, 14 goals, 47 points in 49 games. I'm looking at the fantasy league that all 3 of us are in right now and the other fantasy league. He went drafted in the 10th and 11th round. And you're talking like that doesn't make any sense. He gets drafted so late. And I know, it's 38 years old, Flip. I know you don't like this guy a lot, but plus 33, second in the league. This guy is on the ice a ton, scoring on the top line. One of the best lines in the league as well. And just like I talked about with Sam Reinhart, his bread and butter is right in front of the net. Probably the best hand-eye coordination in the league right now.
I'm not going to disagree with that.
Goals. He is the most underrated right winger for sure. There's no way you can deny that, Flip.
I don't think many times I've put my hand on my head like that. Your list yesterday was questionable, Steele. I might have to rein you back in here. I don't know what's going on out west in BC. Look,
what do you think, Blake? What do you think? What do you think of Pavelski?
That's in my definition a bold take, Blake. What do you think?
Oh, hey, Pavelski, man, this guy's ageless. And talk about consistency. I just keep waiting for him to fall off, and he's not doing it. Flip? Give me. What's your take on Pavelski? I want to hear this. What's going on?
The fact that you said, that's a good point, and I've eaten some hat on saying he was going to fall off. And what Steele is saying about his production is a spot on fact. But he's also playing with 2 amazing young players. With Rupe Hintz and Jason Robertson most of the time, right? He does
nothing himself? He does nothing himself?
I'm not saying he does. Dude, when you got guys on the list like even Alex DeBrincat, Mark Stone, Cole Caulfield, Riley Smith, like holy crow. We're not going to the Joe Pavelski, respect due. We don't even have enough time in this episode for me to get to this. But the fact that you have him as the most underrated, he's a Hall of Famer. To me, that means he's properly rated. People know Joe Pavelski has been a stud. This isn't the show the guy some love who needs more love show. This is the guy, anyway, I don't hate it. Number 1 is bold. Blake, thank you for being a part of today's episode. That's the real deal.
Pleasure, man.
Make sure you go and check out Blake, like we said, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, his podcasts. Make sure you check out Apples and Geno's as well. Thank you for joining us today, Blake. Really appreciate it. We got big time bets coming up in a second.
Hi, this is Walker Mayo, one of the local hosts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Instead of hearing me right now, we could be talking about your business and helping you reach local, passionate sports fans just like yourself. Unlike any other podcast, Locked On gives your local company the unique ability to reach local podcast listeners. If your business wants to connect with local sports fans that are well-educated with disposable income, then let's put your company right here on this Locked On podcast. Local fans love to support local businesses. Text the word advertising to 33777 or visit lockedonpodcast.com/advertising and let us know who you are. Our team will assist you to achieve advertising success with Locked On. Once again, text the word advertising to 33777 or visit lockedonpodcast.com/advertising. We look forward to hearing from you.
I'm Kainani Stevens, host of Locked On Game to Game NHL. Join me as I take you inside every arena to every game and give you the Locked On local experts' insight. By the end, it's as though you were at every game yourself. Find Locked On Game to Game NHL on the Locked On NHL feed and follow today. Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're here, big time bets, where the money is made. We're getting a little tight for time here on this episode, so we're just going to rattle all three off with less than explanation of them. I'll start us off. I'm going to take the Bruins on the money line plus 104 against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Doesn't make any sense. If you're giving me plus odds on the Bruins, who haven't lost more than 9 or more than 10 games,
only explanation
season,
you need to hear.
Only explanation. Bruins money line plus 104. Penguins money line plus 100 against the Capitals. The last 4 games against these two teams, the road team has won. Penguins are on the road. I'm going to take that with a little trend action. Penguins money line plus 100. I know Tristan Jarry isn't in the crease. My lock of the night, Predators money line plus 116 against the Devils. The Predators have won the last 7 matchups against the New Jersey Devils.
I think that's all you need to really hear. What was your second pick, though, Steele, very quickly?
Penguins on the money line plus 100.
What you said about Tristan Jarry does hold true, but Casey DeSmith has already been playing a lot of minutes in that crease for Pittsburgh, and he's been so. Yeah. That one I'd stay away from personally, Steele, but that's okay because I think you're going to like all 3 of my picks. When I looked at this Anaheim, Colorado situation, you know I've been hammering Colorado with regularity. Yeah. There's no value here on the money line. Minus 300, minus 380. This is crazy. And then I wanted to take the puck line. Not feeling it. Rantanen. Talked him up at length. Anytime assists. He's gone cold a couple of games. Pointless in 2. In his career against the Ducks, Steele, in 20 games, 11 goals, 9 assists, 20 points, point per game player. Rantanen, anytime assist, that's my first pick. The St. Louis Blues have not been good this year, but they get Krug back, they get Tarasenko back, they lose that game. Now they're back in the lineup with some regularity here, playing in Arizona. Arizona has 2 wins out of their last 9 or 10 games. They are not playing good. Give me the Blues on the road with a decent odd at minus 150 right now. That might go down. Loving the Blues angle here, getting healthy. Going to showcase some pieces ahead of the deadline, Steele. Some of these players want out of St. Louis, and that means they're going to get some wins. My lock of the night. It's one of the games that you're touching, but I'm not touching it in the same way. Hey, don't get away from me here. Lock of the night. Bruins at Tampa Bay under the number. This has all the makings of a playoff, even conference-type game between 2 teams that play each other tight. How about the last 6 trips against Boston between these 2 teams? Not trips. Between these 2 teams, 6 of 8 gone under the number. This one's going to be a tight checking close game. I might tease it up a little bit, Steele. It's at 6 right now. 6.5 might be more comfortable for me, but right now I'm taking this under either way you slice it. And also, might be a random stat, 7 of the last 7 games of Tampa's against Eastern Conference opponents, way under the number. They play their interconference opponents tight is what I'm trying to say. Give me this under 6 or 6.5. I'm good with it. Bruins, Tampa Bay, low scoring.
I like the lock of the night, and thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. We are available Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. So hit the subscribe, hit the follow button on your favorite podcast platform. And thank you so much for being with us today for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Did you watch every NHL game last night? Of course not. That's impossible. So Locked On brings you Locked On Game to Game NHL. With Locked On Game to Game NHL, we take you inside every arena to every game and give you the Locked On local experts insight. And by the end, it's as though you were at every game. Find Locked On Game to Game NHL on the Locked On NHL feed and follow today. Locked On Game to Game NHL, taking you to every arena for every game with the local experts. Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Walker Mayo, one of the local hosts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Instead of hearing me right now, we could be talking about your business and helping you reach local, passionate sports fans just like yourself. Unlike any other podcast, Locked On gives your local company the unique ability to reach local podcast listeners. If your business wants to connect with local sports fans that are well-educated with disposable income, then let's put your company right here on this Locked On podcast. Local fans love to support local businesses. Text the word advertising to 33777 or visit lockedonpodcast.com/advertising and let us know who you are. Our team will assist you to achieve advertising success with Locked On. Once again, text the word advertising to 33777 or visit lockedonpodcast.com/advertising. We look forward to hearing from you.
Hey, Prime members, you can listen to this Locked On podcast ad-free on Amazon Music. Download the Amazon Music app today.